So good afternoon to everyone. This is our 5 p.m. bulletin on Whispering Hope weather update. And here to bring us our weather update for this afternoon is meteorologist Mr. Lenard Josiah. Mr. Josiah, what's happening? No work was suspended today at midday, and everyone was preparing to start seeing some deterioration in the weather. What's happening in the neck of the woods? Not hearing you. I'm not hearing.
Okay, sure. Good afternoon to you. Are you hearing me right now? Are
Loud
you
and
hearing
clear,
me?
loud and clear, loud and clear.
Great stuff, great stuff. Good afternoon to you and good afternoon to our listening public. Those of you who are here in Antigua and farther afield, we continue to track Tropical Storm Laura this afternoon. I regret not having my satellite images so that I can show you exactly what's happening. If you can get one up for me quickly, but my brother, it would be so easy for me to show exactly how the orientation and the organization of the particular feature. I don't have it with me right now, so I would just generally talk it through unless you can get it. Well, this afternoon as of 5 p.m., the center was located roughly about close to 30 miles or between 30 and 40 miles just to the east of Antigua. It continues to move towards the west or slightly towards the west northwest. It's forecast to move over the islands sometime during the course of this evening, and we are looking at some increasing rainfall, etc., over the island chain sometime during the course of the evening and overnight. Now, I must admit that Tropical Storm Laura is not one of the more friendlier storms to track, simply because of the fact that it is actually succumbing to dry air, and some of those convective storms that normally surrounds the center, they are being broken down at the moment, while other storms are actually being formed further afield. That's why this afternoon you would have seen that some of the thunderstorms activity that you would have received have since weakened and gone towards the west, and that is an indication that there's some possibly dry air in the vicinity, and the convection is not necessarily holding itself together. Notwithstanding, we are still looking at a possible passage of the center over possibly north of Antigua and Barbuda, or someplace between Antigua and Barbuda during the course of the evening hours, and before it moves on towards the west. The winds are located. Now, this is one of the reasons why it is one of the more difficult storms to communicate. The winds are generally located at the somewhere in the northeastern quadrant of the storm. Given that particular scenario, it simply means, and there's no winds in the southern area. We have not noticed any winds in the southern area. Thanks so much, my brother. The winds are located in such a way that is not necessarily symmetrical. So you have all this wind out towards the northeast, towards Barbuda, and nothing in the quadrant of the storm that's closer to Montserrat. Now, if the eye passes or the center passes through between Antigua and Barbuda, Antigua can be placed in the sheltered part of the storm where we get hardly an amount of wind, while most of the wind will show up over Barbuda. That's how significant one little orientation can mean and how significant it can play to the outcome of the expectation that people would have had. So at this stage, we are still looking at the storm center moving over Antigua. However, there is some uncertainty with respect to the wind impacts that we are likely to feel in Antigua. We are still forecasting that there is a strong likelihood of us seeing winds in the region between 30 to 40 miles per hour overnight in the midst of heavier downpours and squalls. We are looking at increase in rainfall activity come tonight, overnight, and into early tomorrow before the rains abate or before the rains quiet down itself. So we're still looking for the activity overnight or later this evening into overnight as the storm center passes through. As you could see here, my brother, you would have noticed that those of you who could see that the cloud mass is fragmented. Some portions of the clouds are located to the west. Some portions of the clouds are located to the east. And Antigua is smack right in the center of no man's land with all that dry air. So that's why on the outside you're not seeing or feeling too much at this time, because we are smack right in the center of a cloud segment to the west and a cloud segment to the east. So during the course of tonight, that some of those clouds will pass through and bring us increase in the weather activity going forward.
Okay, this afternoon, somewhere I read that it is taking the same approach or behavior as it was yesterday, and seemed to be showing some signs of dissipation, if that's the correct terminology that I'm using. So what's going on with the storm itself?
Yes, and for what you're hearing is correct. In the context of what it was this morning in its organization, this afternoon's organization is not so potent. So we are not seeing the type of organization that we saw this morning that would have given us the cause to be concerned for tropical storm conditions coming across Antigua, at least for this afternoon. But be that as it may, we do believe that the environment still supports cloud formation. Those clouds can return at any time. That's the nature of the business that we do right now. Those clouds can return at any time, and they can also create a havoc with respect to the expected weather. So I would not want the residents of our Twin Island state and further afield to become complacent, because those clouds can return in a fury at very short notice into this evening. We continue to closely monitor it, my brother.
Yes, and in layman terms, we see things different than the meteorologists, but most people are asking, if it is going to arrive here, what time are they going to expect this visitor?
Okay, as I said, that the center is located roughly about 30 miles to the east of Antigua. We should have been receiving some measure of wind at least by now. But according to the orientation of the wind field around the storm, there is hardly any wind out towards the western parts of the storm. You would find the winds out towards the northwest and towards the northeast. So because of the fact that hardly any wind is in that quadrant that we're in right now, that's why we're not feeling anything. And there is no wind towards the south, and there's hardly any wind in towards the southeast. So if the storm passes north of us and we are placed into that particular quadrant of the storm, then you can appreciate that the expectation that we would have received some winds might not necessarily materialize. But while it is true that the winds can show up and impact Barbuda, that's the nature of the storm that we are now facing. It is so disorganized, but we are still forecasting that there is a potential for the clouds to return, for there to be cloud activity and wind activity, and as such, the tropical storm warning continues to be in place for the expectation of tropical storm conditions.
Okay, so we just keeping our fingers crossed. This is Whispering Hope 5 p.m. update. We won't be coming back before the storm, but continue to listen to your trusted weather station for updates. And
that's right.
You should have been prepared by now. If you're not prepared, I don't know how else you're gonna get prepared. Most of the stores are already closed, and so you just have to ride out the storm, as the saying goes. One thing for sure, it's not as serious as many would have hoped that it may be, but we're happy and thankful that it is just a minor storm, quote unquote, and everything should be okay after the storm, except for a few down branches if it does pass, and maybe a few power lines not severely damaged.
But it depends. That's right. But it highly depends on the structure of the storm and it passing through. Okay, so we will want everybody to still be vigilant, and if we are perched within the sheltered part of the storm, don't be surprised, because that is the nature of the characteristic of this storm. Hardly the wind to the south, most of the wind towards the north. And if it passes between Antigua and Barbuda, then we will be in the sheltered part and hardly the wind to talk about. However, if it passes towards the south, then a little bit more wind that we are likely to feel. So it's one of those things that we have to give and take, but we continue to monitor its progress very closely.
So I want to thank you again this afternoon for coming on. I know that you're hustling to get some things done before the Sabbath comes on. And so I wish you all the best with everything that you're doing, and have a productive evening and a safe and enjoyable weekend. God bless you, man.
Yes, man, and God bless also. Okay, bye-bye.
Okay, then. Thank you.